February 19, 1945, 06:30 hours. The black horizon of the Pacific was pierced by the first streaks of dawn, though the waters remained a uniform slate. Approximately 5,000 yards from the volcanic shores of Iwo Jima, the USS West Virginia's 16-inch guns thundered across the island, a continuous roar that shook the surrounding waves. On the beaches below, the 1st and 2nd Marine Divisions prepared for the landing that had been meticulously planned for months. Among them, Private First Class Thomas Gallagher, 19 years old, checked his M1 Garand one final time, noting the stiffness of its action in the salt-laden wind. Iwo Jima had been considered virtually untouchable. Japanese intelligence had fortified every ridge, cave, and ridgeline with interlocking fields of fire. The 109th Imperial Japanese Infantry Division, commanded by Lieutenant General Tadamichi Kuribayashi, had anticipated the American approach and transformed the island's black sand beaches and volcanic hills into a labyrinth of defensive positions. Bunkers, pillboxes, and a network of underground tunnels allowed the defenders to move undetected and emerge to strike from unexpected directions. For months, U.S. planners had argued over the potential cost, but the decision to invade had been made. The island was a strategic stepping stone to the Japanese mainland. The amphibious vehicles surged forward. Higgins boats plowed through 2 to 3 foot swells, each carrying 20 Marines, their packs weighted with ammunition, rations, and the cold inevitability of combat. Gallagher felt the vibrations of the boat's engine in his chest and the taste of brine on his lips. The first volley of Japanese artillery fell with deadly precision, sending plumes of sand into the air and rocking the landing craft. Nearby, Corporal Jim Reynolds, 31, ducked instinctively as a shell impacted 20 yards ahead. He had seen the Pacific's fury before, but nothing had prepared him for the immediacy of fire on a 5-mile stretch of volcanic sand. The first waves hit the beach at 8:30 hours. Gallagher and Reynolds scrambled from their boats, feet sinking into black sand that burned under artillery fire, water surging around their knees. Machine gun fire tore through the landing area, forcing the Marines into small, scattered groups. Every bunker had been calibrated for this moment. Every ridgeline was a killing zone. Gallagher noted the positions mentally. Hill 362A to the left, Sugarloaf to the right, Mount Suribachi looming in the distance, its slopes scarred with observation posts. The Japanese had not left a single vulnerable approach. Movement was slow and methodical. Each advance required coordination between the infantry, flamethrower teams, and the support from naval gunfire. Close to the center of the beach, Gallagher saw Sergeant McIntyre direct a platoon to flank a bunker. The flamethrower ignited the entrance, sending smoke and screams into the pre-dawn air. The Marines pressed on, but every step forward seemed to invite another defensive trap. Kuribayashi's plan was not to stop the Americans on the beaches, but to bleed them over time, drawing each unit into the interior where the terrain and prepared defenses would exact maximum attrition. By midday, Gallagher's unit had gained only a few hundred yards. Casualties were mounting, and medics were overwhelmed, moving from position to position under fire, dragging the wounded to shallow sandpits for triage. Artillery support continued, but every crater and shell hole became a temporary cover for Japanese riflemen and snipers, who emerged unexpectedly from camouflaged positions. The Marines' advance was painstaking, with progress measured in yards, often at the cost of multiple lives for each small gain. Gallagher had a brief moment to breathe behind a ridge when he observed a squad attempting to cross an exposed section of sand toward a secondary bunker. Mortar fire erupted, striking within feet of them, and the squad collapsed, pinned down. The Marines were learning, fast and harshly, that conventional tactics would not suffice on this volcanic terrain. Every movement was calculated, every exposure lethal. Nightfall approached at 1800 hours. The first day had ended not with victory, but with a tenuous hold on the beachhead. Gallagher, exhausted and soaked, noted the eerie silence as the sun sank, broken only by distant gunfire and sporadic artillery exchanges. Around him, the surviving Marines tended to the wounded, dug shallow foxholes, and prepared for a night where enemy snipers and artillery could strike with impunity. Kuribayashi's strategy had succeeded for the first day: inflict maximum casualties, slow every advance, and force the Americans to adapt to a terrain that was as hostile as the defenders themselves.
By February 20th, 1945, 0500 hours, the darkness clung to the beach like a heavy curtain. Gallagher had slept little, his body pressed against the sand, rifle at his side, ears straining for any sound that could signal an incoming assault. The night had been punctuated by sporadic mortar fire, distant machine guns, and the occasional shout from fellow Marines. Each sound carried weight, some warnings, some the last cries of men who would not see another dawn. At first light, reconnaissance revealed that the Japanese had begun reinforcing positions just beyond the beachhead. Sniper fire targeted officers attempting to coordinate movements, forcing Gallagher and his squad to move carefully through shallow shell craters and the skeletons of demolished vehicles. The terrain itself slowed progress. Black volcanic sand offered little traction, while the irregular slopes of the island funneled the Marines into predictable paths, each pre-registered with Japanese artillery coordinates. Gallagher's unit was tasked with advancing toward a ridge near Hill 362A, intended to provide a staging point for further inland maneuvers. The climb was slow. Each step upward exposed the Marines to fire from concealed pillboxes, hidden in caves carved into the volcanic rock. Flamethrowers and demolitions teams were used to clear these positions, but the process was grueling. One bunker, almost impervious to conventional attacks, required a sustained salvo of demolition charges before its defenders could be neutralized. Gallagher watched as Sergeant McIntyre directed the team with quiet precision, detonations echoing across the ridge, black smoke curling into the gray sky. During a lull in fire, Gallagher observed the Japanese defenders emerging from a tunnel system nearly 50 yards inland. The enemy fired brief, intense volleys before disappearing back underground. The pattern was relentless: appear, strike, vanish, forcing the Marines to constantly advance with extreme caution. Communications with supporting naval artillery were intermittent, hampered by the shifting positions and dense smoke. The concept of fire superiority that worked on other islands was only partially effective here. Kuribayashi had intentionally designed overlapping defensive zones where American firepower could be diluted. By mid-morning, Gallagher's squad had secured the lower slopes of the ridge, but had sustained several casualties. PFC Lewis, a 19-year-old from Ohio, took a sniper round in the shoulder while attempting to advance under covering fire. Medics rushed forward under the protective smoke of a nearby flamethrower team, pulling him back to the temporary aid station. Gallagher could see the cost in real time. The human toll was immediate, personal, and relentless. At 1100 hours, the first Sherman tanks arrived, their treads crunching over the volcanic sand, guns scanning for hidden emplacements. The armored support provided a new dimension to the assault, but the Japanese anti-tank teams were ready. Bazookas and concealed 47mm guns fired from caves, forcing tank crews to adjust constantly. One Sherman was hit near the base of the ridge, flipping on its side with a thunderous crash. The Marines nearby dived for cover, the vehicle burning as smoke and flames rose 40 feet into the sky. Gallagher took note of each movement, each vulnerability, understanding that the battle's complexity extended far beyond individual bravery. The day stretched long. By late afternoon, the Marines had gained limited ground. Kuribayashi's defenses functioned as intended, drawing American units into narrow corridors where each step was contested. Gallagher's squad had to improvise repeatedly, using natural cover and smoke grenades to mask their movements. Every advance was methodical. Every pause was critical for survival. That night, the sound of intermittent shelling persisted, but the island's internal defenses remained largely intact. Gallagher wrote in his small journal, a practice he kept since boot camp, documenting coordinates of enemy positions, casualties, and progress. The act was both practical and psychological, a way to impose order on the chaos surrounding him. The Marines were beginning to recognize a pattern in Japanese strategy. Kuribayashi had no intention of meeting the Americans in open, pitched battle. Instead, he intended to grind down morale and manpower through attrition. Every bunker, cave, and tunnel was a weapon as potent as a rifle or artillery piece. Every ridge secured by the Americans required weeks of careful clearance. For Gallagher, the reality was becoming stark. Each yard gained on Iwo Jima would demand exacting discipline, patience, and an acceptance of the impossibility of swift victory.
February 21, 1945, 0430 hours. A heavy fog rolled in from the Pacific, cloaking the beachhead in a damp, gray veil. Gallagher, now painfully aware of the rhythm of Iwo Jima, moved with his squad toward a secondary objective, a series of pillboxes at the base of Mount Suribachi's southern slope. Reconnaissance had identified them as key nodes in the Japanese defensive network, capable of enfilading the Marines' forward positions with machine gun and mortar fire. The climb began in small increments. Each yard required careful observation. Volcanic sand clung to boots and equipment, while smoke from previous days' detonations hung in low clouds across the terrain. The Marines used smoke grenades to cover their movements, yet the enemy had anticipated this. Small-caliber automatic fire came from concealed positions, cutting into the advancing squads with precise timing. Gallagher advanced alongside Corporal Reynolds, noting how each man learned to read the island. The slight bulge of sand indicating a hidden tunnel entrance, a misplaced rock that hinted at an observation post. By 0730, the first engagement with the reinforced pillboxes occurred. Flamethrower teams moved forward under suppressive fire, their operators firing carefully into openings. One bunker required 3 separate demolitions before the defenders were silenced. The process was painstaking. Gallagher's squad moved in tight formation, clearing every position as they advanced, knowing that any oversight could result in immediate casualties. Artillery support from the USS Mississippi and nearby cruisers continued, targeting suspected cave entrances and fortified ridges. Each shell shook the ground beneath Gallagher's feet, the concussions disorienting and deafening. Despite the heavy bombardment, the defenders remained disciplined. Japanese soldiers emerged only when advantageous, striking quickly before disappearing into tunnel networks. Kuribayashi's strategy was working as intended. The Americans could take ground, but at a cost measured in men and materiel. By late morning, Gallagher's unit had secured the southern approach to Suribachi. The ridge above offered limited observation, but every step upward was met with sniper and machine gun fire. One Marine, Private Jensen, was hit in the leg while attempting to provide covering fire for a demolitions team. Medics braved the open terrain to extract him under fire, the effort painstakingly slow. Gallagher noted the precise coordination required. One misstep, one delay, and the enemy's prepared positions could inflict significant losses. The afternoon brought the arrival of additional tank support. Sherman tanks and bulldozers moved forward to clear sand obstacles and create temporary cover. Engineers detonated further charges to collapse tunnel entrances. Progress, however, remained slow. Japanese defensive works were extensive, and Kuribayashi had trained his men to resist fiercely, using every advantage of terrain and preparation. The Marines' advance, measured in mere yards, exacted a constant human toll. Night fell at 1830 hours. The Marines dug into shallow trenches, creating positions for observation and defense. Fires from previous shelling illuminated the slopes in an eerie red glow. Gallagher, exhausted, maintained his watch, listening for the sounds of counterattacks or movement in the tunnels below. Sporadic rifle and mortar fire continued through the night. Kuribayashi's men had learned the value of patience, striking in brief, sudden bursts to prevent the Americans from resting or regrouping effectively.
February 22, 1945. Dawn revealed the first real glimpse of Suribachi's northern slopes. Reconnaissance had identified additional pillboxes and cave positions that dominated the island's southern sector. Gallagher's unit moved forward cautiously. Flamethrowers, grenades, and demolition charges were deployed systematically, neutralizing key positions. Each cleared bunker represented a tactical gain, yet also revealed more obstacles ahead. The Japanese defensive works were extensive, and Kuribayashi had trained his men to resist fiercely, using every advantage of terrain and preparation. The Marines' advance, measured in mere yards, exacted a constant human toll. Night fell at 18:30 hours. The Marines dug into shallow trenches, creating positions for observation and defense. Fires from previous shelling illuminated the slopes in an eerie red glow. Gallagher, exhausted, maintained his watch, listening for the sounds of counterattacks or movement in the tunnels below. Sporadic rifle and mortar fire continued through the night. Kuribayashi's men had learned the value of patience, striking in brief, sudden bursts to prevent the Americans from resting or regrouping effectively. By February 23, 1945, 0630 hours. The morning sky was pale and brittle, the fog of previous days lifting to reveal the dark slopes of Mount Suribachi. Gallagher's unit, now consolidated with remnants of other squads, began its advance toward the summit. The southern slopes were littered with the debris of prior assaults, spent shells, twisted metal, and the occasional sign of Japanese resistance, discarded rifles, partially collapsed foxholes, and scorched black sand. Every step upward demanded vigilance. Japanese snipers had learned to use even minor depressions and rocks as concealment, and the Marines knew the cost of underestimating them. By mid-morning, the 1st Marines breached the final line of bunkers at the southern base of the mountain. A coordinated signal from forward observers called in artillery on suspected cave entrances further upslope. The sound of naval guns from the surrounding vessels punctuated the roar of flame and demolition, a relentless barrage designed to keep defenders suppressed. Despite the bombardment, the Japanese positions remained tactically effective. Small groups of soldiers continued to emerge from hidden caves, striking quickly before disappearing back into the labyrinth of tunnels. By 1200 hours, Gallagher's squad reached the northern ridge leading directly to the summit. The first American flag was raised atop Mount Suribachi by a small contingent of Marines, a symbolic gesture observed by soldiers below, but also a signal. Suribachi's southern heights were largely under U.S. control. Gallagher watched from a distance, rifle ready, as the flag flapped in the Pacific wind. While the moment would later be immortalized, the reality remained grim. The interior of Iwo Jima still contained heavily fortified positions, and Japanese counterattacks were expected at any moment. The afternoon was consumed by clearing the remaining pillboxes and caves along the slopes. Japanese forces, though outnumbered on the summit itself, continued to mount resistance through tunnels, mortars, and sniper fire. Gallagher's squad coordinated closely with demolition teams, marking cleared positions and setting charges to collapse tunnels. Every bunker neutralized required precise timing, as accidental detonations could trap Marines underground. By evening, the southern approach to Mount Suribachi was entirely under American control. Casualties were high. Gallagher had seen nearly 1/3 of his immediate squad incapacitated, either killed or wounded. The landscape bore witness to the struggle. Blackened sand, shattered vehicles, and scattered equipment told a story of relentless combat. Gallagher took note of the human cost silently, understanding that every gain had been measured in sacrifice. February 24th, 26th, 1945. With Suribachi secured, the Marines shifted focus inland. Gallagher's unit was assigned to push northward toward Motoyama airfields and the island's central ridges. Japanese resistance intensified. Kuribayashi's strategy now relied on delaying American forces through successive fortified lines, each stronger and more complex than the last. Artillery positions, interlocking machine gun nests, and hidden tunnels allowed defenders to emerge unexpectedly, striking at platoon flanks or supply lines. Advances were slow and incremental. The Marines moved in coordinated bounds, using smoke and suppressive fire to neutralize enemy positions. Flamethrowers and demolition charges remained essential tools, clearing caves and fortified ridges. Mortar and naval gunfire continued to support the assault, but visibility and terrain complexity limited effectiveness. Every step north required careful reconnaissance and deliberate execution. Night operations became standard. The Marines dug shallow foxholes in volcanic ash, often under intermittent sniper fire. Supply chains were stretched, medics overwhelmed, and communication lines under constant threat. Gallagher's journal entries reflected both strategy and survival, documenting positions, recording casualties, and noting enemy activity. Kuribayashi's network of tunnels allowed Japanese forces to shift rapidly between positions, launching sudden counterattacks before vanishing underground.
By February 27, 1945, approximately 0500 hours, the island's volcanic ridges glimmered faintly under the rising sun. Gallagher's squad advanced north toward Motoyama Airfield No. 1, now a focal point for Japanese defensive resistance. The path was a network of lava rock ridges, ash-filled depressions, and concealed caves, all designed to funnel attacking forces into kill zones. Each step forward required calculation. Any exposed position could invite concentrated fire from entrenched defenders. The Marines encountered the first serious inland counterattacks shortly after 700 hours. Japanese infantry emerged from camouflaged cave entrances to fire upon advancing platoons. Mortar shells fell intermittently, forcing the Americans to seek cover behind natural depressions or hastily constructed sandbags. Gallagher noted how even small tactical errors could prove fatal. One hesitation or misjudgment of distance meant casualties. His squad responded with coordinated suppressive fire, carefully advancing in bounds toward the next bunker line. Flamethrower teams, supported by demolition experts, were deployed to clear fortified caves. One cave system, extending nearly 100 yards beneath a lava ridge, required continuous assault with combined small arms, grenades, and flamethrowers. Gallagher observed Sergeant McIntyre direct the operation, timing each detonation and fireburst to neutralize defenders while minimizing exposure to his squad. The effort was exhausting, and progress was measured in yards rather than miles. By mid-afternoon, Motoyama Airfield No. 1 had become a staging ground for further northern advances. Japanese artillery, hidden within surrounding hills, continued sporadic but accurate strikes. Naval gunfire from offshore vessels provided intermittent support, yet the rugged terrain shielded many enemy positions. Gallagher and his unit moved cautiously, marking cleared positions and establishing temporary observation posts. Casualties continued to mount, with medics performing extraordinary efforts to evacuate wounded under fire. March 1 through 5, 1945. The Marines' northward push continued, facing increasingly intricate defensive networks. Japanese troops relied heavily on tunnels and caves, allowing them to launch surprise attacks before vanishing to safety. Each ridge and plateau demanded careful clearing. Gallagher's squad coordinated with adjacent units to form overlapping fields of fire, using mortars, rifles, and machine guns to suppress enemy positions while engineers detonated tunnel entrances. The struggle was relentless, and the island's terrain amplified the difficulty. Volcanic ash, lava boulders, and cratered surfaces slowed movement and masked enemy positions. During these days, Gallagher witnessed firsthand the toll of prolonged combat. His squad had been reduced by nearly half from the original complement, and exhaustion was pervasive. Night operations were fraught with danger. Japanese snipers targeted patrols, while hidden mortars and booby traps claimed additional casualties. Each day required careful planning, coordination, and constant adaptation. Kuribayashi's defensive philosophy to delay, attrite, and force the Americans into costly assaults remained evident in every engagement. March 10th through 16th, 1945. The northern sector, including Motoyama Airfield No. 2 and surrounding ridges, was the final objective. The Marines encountered reinforced bunkers, interlocking machine gun positions, and concealed artillery.
Gallagher Squad, now a skeleton of its original force, advanced under covering fire from adjacent units. Flamethrowers and demolition charges were used systematically to clear positions, while mortars suppressed remaining defenders. By March 15th, coordinated assaults had reduced most organized resistance, although sporadic sniper and small arms fire persisted. March 16, 1945. Official orders declared the island largely under American control, though isolated pockets of resistance remained in cave systems. Gallagher Squad conducted final clearing operations, moving cautiously through tunnels and fortified ridges. Casualties were high. Estimates suggest that roughly 6,800 Marines were killed, with nearly 20,000 wounded across the campaign. Japanese forces, numbering approximately 21,000 at the start, were virtually annihilated, with fewer than 1,000 survivors captured. Gallagher surveyed the devastated landscape. The island was scarred. Blackened sand, destroyed bunkers, collapsed tunnels, and the remnants of defensive positions told the story of one of the most brutal campaigns in the Pacific theater. Mount Suribachi, once a formidable defensive height, now bore the iconic American flag, a symbol of the Marines' persistence and coordination, yet overshadowed by the scale of sacrifice required to secure the island. The Battle of Iwo Jima had achieved its strategic objective, securing a forward base for air operations against Japan and denying the Japanese a defensive stronghold. Yet the human cost was profound. Gallagher, like many survivors, carried both physical and psychological scars from the relentless combat, the losses of comrades, and the unforgiving terrain of the island. Sources used. Part 5. FIFR, The Battle of Iwo Jima, Da Capo Press, 2001. Hirama Hideki, Iwo Jima, Strategy, Tactics, and Survival, Naval Institute Press, 2003. Sullivan, War in the Pacific, Marines at Iwo Jima, Marine Corps Historical Center, 1986. Russ, Breakout from Iwo Jima, United States Army Center of Military History, 1990. Kuribayashi, Letters and Official Dispatches, Japanese Defense Archives, 1945. Conclusion. The Battle of Iwo Jima demonstrated the interplay of meticulous planning, tenacious defense, and the extreme challenges of amphibious warfare. Kuribayashi's fortifications maximized the defenders' impact despite overwhelming American numbers and firepower, while the Marines' adaptability, coordination, and perseverance allowed them to secure a decisive, though costly, victory. The island became a testament to both the brutality of war and the discipline required to overcome it. For survivors like Gallagher, the memory of each foot gained, each bunker cleared, and each fallen comrade remained indelible, a reminder that history is written not only in strategic outcomes, but in the courage and sacrifice of individuals who endured extraordinary circumstances. As we reflect on Iwo Jima today, the island stands as a solemn monument to those who fought, those who fell, and those who carried the legacy forward, preserving the memory of their service and the reality of the Pacific War for future generations.